In 1998, James Hayes hit the jackpot and won a jaw-dropping $19 million. You would think that would set him up for life. But fast forward 20 years, and he was stuffing his clothes with pillows, spray painting liquid bandages on his fingers, and robbing banks. He became notorious as the PT Bandit, pulling off not one, but 11 separate bank heists, scoring tens of thousands of dollars along the way. It's a story that will leave you speechless. We've all heard of the lottery curse, where a winner's luck runs out, but Hayes took it to a whole new level. Here's the incredible story of how he went from a millionaire with a fleet of Lamborghinis to a bank robber, living in an abandoned garage with his cat. This is a journey you won't forget. Winning the jackpot. It all started in 1998 when Hayes was a 35-year-old security guard living paycheck to paycheck. He was unhappily married, living with and cared for his grandmother, and struggled with depression thanks to a turbulent childhood. On January 7th at 6:30 p.m., he stopped by a gas station on the way to his night shift. He picked up a pack of Marble Lights and a quick pick lottery ticket, as usual. The draw was just 30 minutes later, but as he was working, he didn't get a chance to check his numbers. When he clocked off at 4:30 a.m., he went straight home to bed. But he didn't get much time to rest. At 6 a.m., his grandmother got up and checked the lottery numbers in the newspaper like she did every day. This time, though, they matched. Unable to wait, she burst into Hayes' room to wake him and share the news. He'd won the jackpot, $19 million. After telling his wife, he called the gas station where he'd bought the ticket. As a regular, he was well known there and friends with the manager, Diane Ricketson. After congratulating him, she asked him to take her out on a date. He replied, "No, I'm married." "At least I tried," she recalled. When he claimed his prize, Hayes faced a difficult decision: take the lump sum or opt for annual payments. After taxes, he was due $13.7 million. Taking the cash will pay out more in the long run due to interest, but Hayes knew he couldn't handle it and opted for 20 annual payments of $684,000. More than enough for most. But would it be enough for Hayes? Las Vegas and Lamborghinis. At his first press conference, Hayes admitted that the money couldn't have come at a better time. He was struggling to make ends meet, had the IRS on his back, and according to him, didn't have a savings account. He had a restored muscle car instead, and even that needed work. When asked what he planned to do with the money, he revealed that he intended to soup up his '68 Camaro and had already given his 2-week notice at work. "Wouldn't you?" he smirked. This would allow him to spend more time with his wife, who'd worked opposite shifts from him, and enable them to go on vacation, maybe to Hawaii. "I'm not going to blow the money," he said. "I know I'll change, but only for the better. Mainly, what I want to do is help out my family and friends in need." Of course, it wasn't long before fixing up his car and going on a trip with his wife morphed into an insane spending spree. Due to his mental health struggles, he probably should have put a small amount of his cash toward therapy. Instead, he became an emotional spender, attempting to heal his past trauma with luxury shopping sprees and trips to Vegas. As a longtime enthusiast, most of his winnings went to cars, including 6 Lamborghinis and a fleet of classic Bentleys, Porsches, and Corvettes. He also splashed out on a $1 million beachfront house in California and 3 other properties nearby and in Utah. His newfound wealth catapulted him into the high life and new social circles. He started a business renting exotic sports cars to high rollers and celebrities. One of his favorite name drops was the time he loaned a nail-polish pink Lamborghini to Formula One world champion Mario Andretti for the running of the bulls. Losing everything. Hayes' spending sprees generated friction in his already rocky relationship with his first wife, so she left him, taking half of his annual lottery payments with her. Undeterred, Hayes continued spending on his previous rate. He attended lavish parties, hooked up with actresses, and splurged tens of thousands of dollars on Rolex watches, Persian rugs, and five-star hotels. Then he met Stephanie Weisinger, a banker, whom he wooed with gifts and vacations. He even let her kids drive his Ferrari. They married on Valentine's Day 2002, and from the outside, it really looked like he was living the dream. However, all was not as it seemed. Once married, Stephanie got a better look at his finances and suggested wealth management lessons. He was caught up in the excitement, she said, and blowing his dough on toys, in Vegas casinos, or just giving it away to his friends. He didn't really get to have a childhood, so winning the lottery made him act like a kid in a candy store. Then another issue reared its ugly head. The year before his win, Hayes had an accident at work that left him with 3 excruciatingly painful herniated discs. He had surgery in 2004, but it didn't work, so his doctors prescribed pain medication and sent him on his way. The problem with meds like this is that you can develop a tolerance and require a stronger and stronger dose. And that's exactly what happened to Hayes. Without a job or health care, he was required to fund his habit himself. Of course, with his stacks of cash, this was no problem. That is, until they ran out. As his alimony had reduced his yearly payout to $300,000, Hayes started getting an advance on the following year's lottery check and borrowing against it. Along with some bad business decisions, his debts began piling up, and once again, he got into trouble with the IRS. Soon, the lottery started withholding his payments to offset the money he owed, and in 2007, he had to file for bankruptcy. He lost his cars and houses and was forced to move into a modest apartment where he worked as the building manager in exchange for free rent. All he took with him to his new home was regret and now an unfunded pill addiction. Little did he know, things would soon go from bad to worse. The fire. In January 2007, believing he'd hit rock bottom, Hayes was dealt another blow. A tenant at his apartment complex, who was struggling with mental health issues, started a fire and burned the whole place down. According to Hayes, he bravely evacuated all 60 tenants, 2 dogs, 3 cats, and 1 very scared goldfish. Although the building owner, with access to the CCTV, says that the feats of heroism were greatly exaggerated. Fortunately, whether it was thanks to Hayes or not, no one passed away in the fire. But he lost everything. As he was living rent-free, he wasn't entitled to any unemployment benefits, health care, or relocation compensation. He desperately applied for new jobs, submitting 38 applications in total, but no one wanted to hire him, a 55-year-old with a bad back and next to no work experience. According to him, every interview went like this: "Can you pick up 50 pounds? All day? Have you ever run a cash register? No? What have you been doing these last 19 years? You won what?" Miserable and homeless, he, Stephanie, and their cat, Dr. Pepper, moved into what he described as his crazy friend's garage. Penniless and furious at the hand life had dealt. Without money for his pain pills, Hayes went into withdrawal, which forced him to switch to buying an alternative on the street. At $1,000 a week, this expense was now way out of his reach and often left him to go without. "I mentally snapped," he said. "I was broke, dope sick, pissed off at the world, living in a garage with my beloved cat looking up at me, hungry." And that's when his thoughts turned to crime. Or, more specifically, robbing a bank. "I truly thought robbing a bank was a victimless crime. That's not the teller's money, it's the bank's, and I hate banks," he said. Becoming a bank robber. On April 27, 2017, a 55-year-old Hayes sat broken in his friend's garage. He was listening to Judas Priest Breaking the Law and tried to make the biggest decision of his life. Years later, he described the feeling that he had an angel and a devil on each shoulder. The angel was saying, "Don't do it. You could go to prison for 20 years. And the devil was saying, It's Friday. You're broke. Are you really gonna go through the whole weekend without a fix, you loser? By the end of the song, he'd reached his decision. He'd do it. He'd rob a bank. What more did he have to lose? So he grabbed a pillow and stuffed it under his shirt to disguise his body type, pulled on a baseball cap, and headed to a bank outside Carpinteria. Inside, he passed the teller a note demanding cash. Terrified, she handed over $3,300. Hayes apologized and told her it was for a family emergency before fleeing to his getaway car. In less than 3 minutes, he'd made enough to feed his habit for 3 weeks without charge. When he watched the news that night, he waited with bated breath to see if they were onto him. Police are looking for a 350-pound Hispanic male, the newsreader announced. Not even close to Hayes' description. He'd gotten away with it. After I did the first one, it was so easy. It was like, wow, he said. It got even easier and easier every time. I was hooked. I was getting off on it. It was like a game. Before attempting his next heist, he researched low-risk bank robbery strategies online and read all the true crime books he can get his hands on. He learned that 5 p.m. was the best time for a robbery, and that was when the cops had a shift change. He also started putting more effort into disguising his body type, amassing a collection of hats and spraying his fingertips with liquid bandages to conceal his fingerprints, and started scattering it in each bank in an effort to send cops on a wild goose chase. Over the course of the next 5 months, he was hitting a bank every couple of weeks. He followed the same MO each time, handing the teller a note and claiming a family emergency. He never brought a gun, fearing the longer prison sentence, but occasionally, he threatened to shoot. With the spoils, he bought a champagne-colored PT Cruiser to use solely as a getaway car. This earned him the moniker PT Cruiser Bandit, but he was also dubbed the Seasoned Bandit by the FBI due to his gray hair and advancing age. Hayes' arrest. By September 2017, Hayes hit 10 banks and come away with at least $40,000. The FBI was hot on his tail, but all they had on him was that he must have lived somewhere off Highway 126 due to the pattern of robberies. Then Hayes made a critical mistake. He attempted to revisit a branch he'd held up in June, and an employee recognized him. He fled empty-handed and got away, but it alerted the FBI that he was about to attempt another heist. So they staked out the highway. Sure enough, on September 26th, he struck again, and this time, as he drove away, agents were able to get his license plate. The car wasn't registered to Hayes, but thanks to an anonymous tip-off, they got his name. Then, on October 2nd, more than 15 armed agents surrounded the garage and waited for him to emerge. As Hayes stepped outside, agents shouted, "Don't move," and trained their sights on him. "There were so many lasers on my body. I looked like I had measles," he said. Both Hayes and Stephanie were arrested and interrogated. She claimed no knowledge of the robberies, and Hayes was keen to confirm that he'd kept her in the dark on purpose. Due to the severity of his crimes, Hayes faced 20 years in prison, but his lawyer fought hard to emphasize his clean record and the fact that he never used violence. Mr. Hayes was a pitiful addict, he explained, living in a garage and dealing with one of the worst addictions ever. He was hardly John Dillinger. Instead, he was a victim of prescription opioids and the so-called lottery curse. His plea for leniency worked, and Hayes was sentenced to just 33 months in prison in order to pay back $39,424 in restitution. While incarcerated, he detoxed cold turkey, took up art, and even started writing a book, a memoir called Lottery to Robbery. Reflecting years into his sentence, he said, "Prison is the most horrible thing ever, but I'm thankful it happened. It saved my life. I should have OD'd 100 times. And now I'm 8 months sober. Everything about how you live can be either low, medium, or over the top. If I could change one thing about myself, I'd be more in the middle."